Hey everybody, and welcome to week 2 of the Your First Dollar implementation program. I hope you got a lot out of understanding what your entrepreneurial operating system is. It's the first foundational building block of our success pyramid. And when you understand how you work, and then we give you understanding of how to organize and maintain the energy of your work, which is the subject for this week, then you'll be completely ready in a way that you've never been ready before to tackle starting an online business. So now you'll start to see the payoffs of all the work you did with your entrepreneurial operating system. And if you haven't had a chance, we did 2 great brainstorming sessions in week 1. And it'd just be comforting, if nothing else, to have a listen to those at points during the week. They're now on the week 1 lessons. They're the last 2 lessons in week 1. And they're a great if for nothing else, A, it'll give you an insight into how you work, and B, it'll show you that there are plenty of other people just like you, which is really useful, because as a percentage of the population, we are extremely rare. There's only 5% of the population that actually thinks like us. So, let's get into it. When I designed this module, one of the biggest issues that people have when they're starting an online business or they want to expand out their existing division is they just don't have time. Right? They're up to their necks either in the existing work of their business, or they've got a 9-to-5 job, or they've got responsibilities, which means that they're really trying to carve out little bits of time. So when putting together a system and trying to find a system, we had to figure out how that would work. And of course, for most of us, we've tried dozens of different operating systems, dozens of different planning and productivity systems, and they just never stick. So we had to figure out the no time problem. The other huge one, and perhaps if there's one single factor, literally one single factor, that determines success, is the energy that you have. Now, I am not talking about Tony Robbins, let's power through this, or even your classic hustle things. In fact, I hate hustle. If you are 20-something, and if you're listening to this and you are 20-something, bless you, I wish I'd had access to this information at 20. But for most of us, we've got responsibilities. We've got things that, like I mentioned in the past slide, we've got this is something that we're trying to do on the side. And burning yourself to a crisp, burning both ends of the candle, is just not going to get it done. You might get it done for a little bit of the time, but it's not sustainable for a normal human being, right? And like I said, I hustled when I was 20. And you can do it for a little while when you're young and when you don't have responsibilities. But as soon as you pass that point, right, you've got to come up with a system that takes into account that you've got other things happening. And as you'll hear and as you'll understand during this part of the week, where this becomes devastating is that every single thing that you do, every single decision you make, saps away at that energy. And so if you're leaving it till the last thing at night to do your work, if you have used up your energy fuel tank, your decision-making willpower fuel tank, you are stuffed. So we've got to figure out that problem. Then the other thing that just drives people nuts is, what do I focus on? What do I do next? For you high fact finders, high follow-throughs, and just high fact finders in general, this here causes you so much stress. What do I focus on? Of course, for us high quick starts, low follow-throughs, it's like, there's so many things we could do. Wow, check this out. Oh, there's a new course just came in. Let's do that for a while. And, this one's getting a little tough. Oh, I'm a bit stuck here. So let's go and do something else, right? So 2 completely incompatible methods of working, which is why you've struggled for so long to make something like this work. But now we know. So whatever we do, we have to take into account, okay, on one hand, people who need to know exactly what the next step is, and then the squirrels who have no problems with trying different things all the time and starting something new. But unfortunately, if you start a lot of stuff, you finish very little. And perhaps the biggest thing, and as we discovered last week, perhaps the biggest issue in terms of entrepreneurial operating system, particularly for high fact finders, is that the feel, and I'll exaggerate slightly, but the feel is that the decision making is at a life or death level. Whereas where you need to, and so if you make the wrong choice, the consequences are immense. My job over the next 7 days is to convince you that it's, as I mentioned on the brainstorming calls, it's a let's try a different sushi roll at lunch type decision. And hey, it's disappointing if you try the vinegared octopus and it doesn't taste that good. But hey, it's just lunch. You can go back to your favourite crispy chicken sushi roll tomorrow, right? That's the point. That's where we've got to bring down this thing. And because for a lot of you listening to this, you've tried this again and again and again, right? It's so important for you to understand that it hasn't been your fault. We've got an unusually high number of high fact finders, high follow-throughs, which is an awesome combination, but it's very rare. Over the course of our study, it's literally 3% of entrepreneurs have this particular skill, and yet there are literally no courses designed for you. Because the people who design money-making courses just don't have that. That's not their style of entrepreneurism. And so I'm particularly excited for you guys and gals, because it's, for the first time, you'll be able to do things in a way that you understand. So understand that it's your entrepreneurial operating system that has caused the problem. You've just been trying to play tennis with a baseball bat. So they're the things we have to avoid. What are the things that we have to include for a system to work? We have to make sure it works for where you are now. It's all very well and good for a productivity guru who spent their entire life setting something up to follow that system. Like I said, they don't have the outside obligations, right? Obligations. They don't have that stuff. We do. We're in the real world, and I teach for the real world. Now, there are obligations, and it sounds sort of like negative, but there's a lot of positive obligations that we have, that we want to continue to have. Spending time with family, kids, hobbies, all these sorts of things. Plus, the reality is for a lot of you that you either have you're trying to start something new and you've got existing business, or you're starting from scratch and you're working for somebody else, or the way you make money to sustain your life is somewhere else. So we've got to understand that's where you're starting, and the system has to take that into account. It's also crucial that you just have to know what to do next, for two reasons. One, for our high fact finder types amongst us, you need this desperately, right? You can do this. On the call I had yesterday, we had somebody on who was a high fact finder, high follow through, and they had a brilliant experience. They'd put together an entire course, taught it, sold it to 38 people, and got great testimonials. Brilliant, right? You think, hey, they're on a winner. But of course, they followed the step-by-step guide about how to create a course. When it comes to marketing, because then they basically were, hey, here you go, here's your course, it's been successful, well done, they felt great, but then, no, what do I do next? And of course, there are a million options. So when there's a million options for a high fact finder, you end up doing nothing. And if you were a quick start in that process, then you just try hundreds of different options, and you'd end up either A, doing them poorly, or not doing any at all. So we've got to know exactly what to do next. We've got to give you a framework, a mental model, so that you always know what that is. So you can choose to ignore that in the case of Quick Starter, but at least you're making a conscious decision. You know that you're ignoring that, and hopefully giving yourself a reason why. And finally, we need to build a system that works and focuses on your strengths. It is crucial that we do this. If, so much of the time, and I hear it in the language when I do brainstorming sessions, I force myself to do this and I'm really proud because I force myself to do it. And, you should be proud. And it probably took, as you'll discover this week, it took an enormous toll on your ability to do other things by doing things that are your weaknesses. So the system that we use has to focus on your strengths, and in what is some of the most fun we'll have this week on our brainstorming sessions is when there's something that is a weakness, we are going to be able to turn that on its head, just like I did when I was writing my book, and actually utilize your strengths to do something that typically was something that was weak. So we still have to do it. There are some things we can't avoid, but when we can't avoid them, let's try rethink them so that they're more focused on strengths and weaknesses. And that's a lot of fun. And that's where being involved in an implementation group like this can be so powerful. When I created all of this, the company name that Julie chose for her company was Niche Style. And I loved it. It was a combination of the word niche and, in other words, focusing on something that you love, and style, which is the last half of lifestyle. Because if you don't acknowledge, like I said, there's people on this course that they want to build the next $10 million company. They want to build the next $1 billion company. They want to build the next unicorn. And that is awesome, right? And by the way, the techniques that I teach you over the next 4 weeks are just as important for building a unicorn as it is for making your first $100,000 over the course of the next 12 months. Same thing, right? That's where, a unicorn is a 7-year commitment, and that's fine. I'm teaching for people that want to build a lifestyle, because look, if you're earning $1 million a year, that, unless you've got tastes which are way above what you're doing, you're going on cocaine binges in Las Vegas or something, you'll have a great life. You'll be able to work from where you want. You'll be able to travel where you want. I was with good mate Taki Moore over the weekend, and he's taking his family of 6 all round the planet this year. He's taking them out of school, taking them all around the planet. He's doing his workshops everywhere, and that's awesome. What a great thing to be able to do. So that's where we're going with it. So we need to design the business around you. I mentioned that energy management is the key to success, and it is so the key to success. Let's get some of my awesome skills here. Let me just explain why energy is so well. You've got to imagine that this is a fuel tank. You don't have to imagine. This drawing is so good. So at the start of a day, when you wake up, you have a complete, if this is your willpower fuel tank, you've got a complete full tank, because guess what? How do you fill the willpower fuel tank? There's actually only 3 ways. We've got sleep, and that's 8 hours for most people. Sleep, 8 hours. And we've got meditation, also can top up. So it's a benefit of meditation that I've found is fantastic. And if you're thinking meditation, oh my God, Ed's gone hippie, blah, blah, blah. Nothing of the sort. I might do a little bonus video of how I do, because trust me, I'm the least hippie person And what will be a surprise to you, every successful person I know now meditates, right? It's a secret. And the reason it's so powerful, I think, for a lot of people is that it fills it. Well, it helps. It's a top up for a tank during the day. The other thing is actually glucose. Is the other thing food. Now you've got to be careful here, because if you fill yourself up on Tim Tams, I've tried this. I've tested it for you. That will be a big problem. But they're the three things that you can do to top up your willpower. Because here's the thing. During the day, every single decision that you make reduces the fuel tank. Okay? It goes down. So as you make decision after decision, it drops the fuel tank. Every activity that you do drops willpower fuel tank. Now, here's the thing. On the cars where you have your rev counter, you got 1K, 2K. My Hyundai i30 tops out at 2K. But if you've got a car with an actual engine, it might go to 4, 5. Anyway, it goes. Now, when you're traveling in economy mode, of course, you're only, the needle's only going up to, 1, 2K. It's not using much fuel. If you're cruising along the highway, it's doing something that's easy. It's already got momentum. It's got velocity. So the engine doesn't have to work as hard, right? But if it hits a big hill, or you're accelerating a traffic light or you're trying to pull another car out of the mud because it's stuck, boom, all of a sudden, you're tapping out the engine, and guess what? That uses way more fuel, right? So your fuel goes through the roof. Guess what? That's what happens when you're doing something that is a weakness, right? You're using way more fuel. Yes, you can get it done. Now, if you remember on your Colby report, your energy pyramid, where it had 100 units of energy, notice how it said to keep the type of activities that you're doing in your core energy zone, and it gave you a breakup. Well, this is where this is a big payoff, because if you focus on things that you're strong at, guess what? It's like you're cruising along the highway. But if you focus on doing things, like I remember speaking with Josh Houston on a podcast episode recently, and he got involved in multi-level marketing, which is totally fine. I don't have no problem with that. But he hated speaking to crowds, hated speaking to people. And he spent a year, because he's got a lot of discipline, he spent a year doing this, and he felt that it was growing him as a person. And there's no question that if you repeatedly stretch yourself, you'll grow. But here's the thing: your cognitive actions, these are things that these are in your genes. These are things that you can't really change. So if you're doing, and the best thing about today is if you're doing your business in the mode that you are good at, and you're working on your strengths, well, everything seems so much easier. Everything goes so much better. So we need to figure that out. And we've talked about the fuel tank. By the way, did you know, this blew me away. I only discovered this about 6 months ago. See the petrol Bowser there, and it's got a little triangle onto the left-hand side. Did you know that triangle, it doesn't matter what car you're using, that triangle is there on every single car, and it lets you know which side of the car the fuel tank is. Isn't that awesome? Look at that. You've just paid for the course in that piece of information. When you rent a car, as I do a lot, or I've got a flexi car, then cars are different all the time. Oh, there you go. I just found that just so supremely interesting. Back to the course, I know. Every decision that we make withdraws that fuel tank. But here's the thing that's crazy, right? If that decision is what clothes you're wearing, withdrawal from the fuel tank. Where are you going to have lunch? Withdrawal from the fuel tank. What route am I going to take from work? Withdrawing the fuel tank. Classic one that we all face. What am I going to do next? Withdrawal from the fuel tank. So if we design up a system that there's no decision to be made, there's a post-it note sitting there in your today column, sitting there and going, right here, this is what you should be doing next. No decision, no withdrawal from the fuel tank. You'll be able to do more. You'll be able to have that discipline. Because here's the thing, once that fuel tank gets low, it gets to this, we're at this sort of area here, guess what happens? Your body goes into preservation mode, and it just wants to do stuff that is, it knows that you need to rest and recover, and that you're just not going to be in a position to be able to do anything creative or anything else. So instead of working for half an hour on your business, creating a new Facebook lead gen test, you'll find yourself, and you've got no control over this, you'll find yourself watching Housewives of Atlanta or playing Clash Royale or watching YouTube videos. Or is that just me? But you will. This is what happens, right? There's a consequence of draining your fuel tank, because once you hit that fuel, when that fuel gauge alert goes on, then your body literally goes into preservation mode, and you just won't be able to do. And I bet you, for a lot of people who've tried courses before, it's one of the reasons they haven't been able to stick it is, say for example, you've had a big technical problem and you've got super frustrated, or you've been trying to choose a market next week, right? And it's such a huge decision that you spend all your time thinking about that. And guess what? Your fuel tank, it's like you're trying to, you've got, not only have you got your Hyundai i30, but you've got this 2-ton weight of decision-making stress behind you, and the poor old Hyundai is trying to drag up the hill. So it's redlining the entire time. And so your tank is just drained. So that's another reason you haven't been able to go forward. Question I want to ask during this week is, what's your best time of day? I am recording this and I'm looking at the clock here. It is 5:53 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. 5:53 on a Tuesday morning. And those of you who are super alert will know that this is the last piece of content for this thing, done slightly behind time. But this is the best time to do it for me. I'm a morning person. As soon as I get to 8, 9:30 at night, I do not want to be doing work. I'm just done. I just don't like it. And so I've designed my business around when the time of day that I am most comfortable. So that is a big thing for me. And hopefully you will know from just looking at what you do, what is a good time for you. So I want to leave you. I'm going to give you the action steps right up front for this week. And then, of course, you've got all the videos. So obviously, the first thing in this amazing week for Kanban for Entrepreneur, because good news, guess what? Taking all that stuff into account, boom. We've got everything here and available. The first thing is do the training, okay? Set up your Kanban board. And then what I want you to do is schedule 30-minute sessions. You'll hear this in the course. Schedule your 30-minute sessions in your calendar, the critical focus time, the time that is sacrosanct. Make 30-minute blocks. Get into the habit this week of doing the 30-minute blocks, even if it's just to watch and do the Kanban stuff. Okay, and then make sure you join in the Q&A, and I'll send you an email that has the Q&A details, because what we're going to do is we're going to workshop, you're ready creating tickets that help you, and then look at stuff that you don't like doing, and we're going to brainstorm together with stuff and methodologies to turn stuff that is sucks, that you don't enjoy, and at least make them more tolerable, or at least make sure that they take less fuel out of your willpower tank than they normally would. Because if we do that, then guess what? You've got more energy to focus on the stuff that's important. With that, thanks very much. Get onto this week. This is a big thing. This has been the fundamentals, right? This is you get this week and next, last week and this week, right? And oh my goodness, it's just makes the next 4 weeks, because it's go time, right? It makes the next 30 days just so much easier and so much better for you than you've ever tried before. And I can't wait for you to see all the benefits of implementing your entrepreneurial operating system and Kanban for entrepreneurs. So go to it, have a great week, and I'll speak to you on the brainstorming sessions.